On the surface, my life was on track. I was a medical laboratory scientist with a degree in biochemistry, and I was preparing for a PhD. My mind was trained to see the world in data and repeatable results, but inside, I was lost. I was lost amidst the sea of depression and this overwhelming feeling that there had to be something more. Have you ever had an experience you couldn't quite explain? A moment where you felt so deeply connected to everything around you. For years, both as a scientist and as a seeker, I asked pretty much anybody who would listen these questions. You see, my journey to find this more didn't begin in the lab, but in a space of quiet meditation. As I started to heal, I was faced with a profound choice, a voice that asked, do you want to help the world by studying the brain or by showing people how you healed your mind? I chose the latter, and I decided to call my dad, whom I often refer to as my first spiritual teacher. Years ago, he hosted these gatherings in our home for people to explore science and spirituality, and he called them Onion Soup. When I decided to create a space for these conversations, I asked my dad if I could carry on the name. He gave me his blessing, and the podcast was born. Onion Soup. The name itself is our philosophy. Life, consciousness, and the universe are all like an onion. As we peel back one layer, we find another. And just like a hearty bowl of soup, these deep conversations are meant to be comforting, nourishing, and soothing to the soul. Onion Soup is more than just a podcast. It's a space for those who are curious and those who are seekers. A place to be inspired to expand your own awareness and to soothe the soul by resonating with what your spirit already knows is true. Today, that space is growing. It's so much bigger than what I could have ever imagined. But to write this next chapter, I need your help. I'm inviting you to become a true partner in our mission. With your support through this Patreon, we can achieve 3 critical goals together. First, sustainability. To provide the resources to make Onion Soup a fully sustainable long-term project. Second, elevation. To reinvest, improving our sound and video quality. And to travel the world conducting powerful on-site interviews with our guests face-to-face. And third, expansion. To build the professional assets needed to bring our conversations to a major network, sharing this work with millions. If this message resonates with you, please look at our tiers below. For as little as $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes and join our private community. You can become a supporter, an insider, a co-creator, or even a partner in this vision. Whatever you choose, thank you for being here and for being a part of the Onion Soup journey. Now, let's peel back these layers together. So as we're talking about this awareness, so becoming aware of the physical body, we were just saying how subconsciously we're doing these things anyway. And we're also mentioning manifestation. We're always constantly manifesting whether or not we're aware of it. How much does one's awareness provide clarity to guide them either in or out of a particular situation?
You know, I was just reading an article the other day where they said the best employees are the ones that have awareness. And this was a major company, like one of the top companies in the world. Their top hiring strategy, their top hiring person, one of the biggest things they watched for was, does that person have awareness? Because if they don't have awareness, they're going to go like a bull into a china shop. And if they're feeling anger, they're going to push anger onto everyone. If they're feeling frustrated, they're going to push frustration onto everyone. If they're feeling gratitude, they'll push that as well. But being aware is almost like a little circuit breaker where you can flip the breaker and say, well, no, even though I feel that, I can choose what I'm going to exhibit. I'm going to choose how I'm going to act. I'm going to choose how I'm going to think. And so I think having that awareness is an absolute critical factor. The other side to that is, going back, I love your picture that you've got in the background, this idea of the light and it's coming in, right? And I could go on how I interpret that, but I firmly believe each of us have a purpose and multiple purposes. If we're not aware of what we think we're supposed to be accomplishing in this life, we're probably living at such a low level that we're never going to feel that fulfillment that we would feel if we were chasing what we believe we're supposed to be accomplishing.
Hmm. Interesting. On your site, I noticed that you had a link. You have free resources on your site. One of them is a brain dump. And it's this worksheet that helps you really, I think the idea was to create a business plan, but how can one use a brain dump in this idea of just writing everything down to find clarity and awareness in their lives? Because you really don't know until you start.
What I love is a principle can be applied. It could be applied in business. It could be applied in your personal life, and it works just as well. So if you're somebody who's not sure what you should be doing, and oftentimes people have this idea of, oh, I want to accomplish this thing, but you don't know how to get there. And then you have so much coming in at you, and you have all these responsibilities and these duties and all these problems, and you're trying to face every day, and it gets to be a mess, and you get all knotted up inside. Taking a sheet of paper out and just writing out everything you're supposed to do, or all the things that come to your mind, all the things that are bothering you, and the more you write, the more those things pop out. Pretty soon what you've done is you've given all of those things a space and acknowledged them at some level. So now you're going to have a lot more inner peace because you acknowledged all the things that were itching you on the inside, but now you also have it in writing so you can look at it and be like, oh yeah, this is how I can take care of this one. This one's important. I can push this one off. I could actually wait on until next week for this one. And you give yourself the ability to create a game plan for how you're going to accomplish all the things you are supposed to do.
Mm. How does that play into, if at all, another resource you have on your site where it's the ideal client identifier worksheet, where you write down your 5 favorite clients, not just from a business perspective, but perhaps for if an individual is single and they're looking to attract a spouse into their life, or they're looking to attract a particular job. How can the brain dump play into really manifesting different aspects of your reality?
I like that. So something that really stuck out to me is I wanted to get healthy. And in order to get healthy, I had to change me on the inside and me on the outside. And so brain dump, I was like, oh, I want to get healthy. Well, I need to change how I think about all these things. So if I'm constantly out there thinking that I want to eat a bunch of sugar, and that's what's on my brain all the time, I'm not going to shift into that new reality. But then you also mentioned that ideal client, and let's extract that beyond client, but we just say, who's our ideal people? Well, if I shift from being the guy that sits on the couch eating junk food all day to the guy that's going to be looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I've got to change my ideal people as well a little bit. And that doesn't mean I'm saying to my friends, go away. It means I'm going to put a little more distance and spend a little less time with those friends so I have time for my new friends and my new associates. People that are healthy, they go to the gym. Why do they go to the gym? Well, it's an opportunity to physically exhibit the things and the emotions and the dreams and the hopes, but then you're also associating with other like-minded individuals that are all going to have that social pressure to push you where you want to be. So I would say, if you are trying to figure out, how do I accomplish the next thing in my life? Maybe identify your ideal people you want to be around. Or if you're a business, if you're trying to serve a certain group of people, identify who that ideal person is that you're trying to serve. And by writing it out, you're calling to yourself and to everyone else, hey, this is who I'm looking for. And just like looking for the red cars, they start showing up in your life every time.
Yeah, but Jason, all of this sounds great. But what about people who are tired? They're physically exhausted and they're able to write everything down, but they just can't find the physical energy to get up and be active and pull the trigger, so to speak.
I would say if you're writing everything down, why not put that paper aside and write down all the reasons that you're physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually exhausted. Give yourself the space to start figuring out, what is it about my life that leaves me exhausted? Why is it that I'm overwhelmed by this? And sometimes you may be like me, where you have this thing that happened in your past that it takes a while to identify all the pieces. but others are just going to come popping right up for you. Oh, I'm exhausted because this is hard for me. Why is this hard for me? I don't know. But I do know that my good friend is really good at it. I'll ask them to help me out with that thing. And that may shift your entire experience because now you've connected a good friend to something negative, and that good friend and their influence and their positivity may be enough to shift that thing from negative to positive. So I guess probably for me is identify it and then chunk it down into little bite-sized pieces to figure out why you're exhausted, and then tackle the exhaustion first. Because if you are in that state where you're completely emotionally burned out, give yourself enough grace and enough space to start resetting on that before you go tackle all the big things that you want to do in the future.
Wow, I love that. What about people who they have pretty set careers and they're fairly successful in the jobs that they have? However, they don't particularly care for it or like it. It's oftentimes a little bit more challenging, at least from outside looking in, to say, that sounds fine and dandy for you, but there are people who depend on me. I already have a successful business. I already have a successful career. I would rather do something else, but I just can't. What would you say to those types of people?
I'd say you're right. You're in a position where you're right. You have people depending on you. It might not be wisdom to go throw it all to the wind, but most people only work 6 to 12 hours a day. What are you doing with the other, 12 to 18? Obviously, you're going to sleep some, but if there are other things you want to chase, you still have a lot of time where you could carve out just a little bit. I love What About Bob? I don't love the language in the movie, but I love the message of the movie, because Bob goes from this complete disaster who can't do anything to a guy who's untangled himself and been able to find freedom. And at the end of the movie, he's now the therapist helping other people. And he did that through the baby steps therapy. So if you're in a position where you're like, I don't love my job, I don't love what I do, I have people dependent on me, what's that one little step you could take that maybe will start to shift? Or maybe you'll just find more fulfillment. And maybe you do maintain that job you don't love, but you do say at the same time, there's some other things I want to do. Maybe I want to go out and serve, and maybe you dedicate a little time to that. It's not always that you have to throw everything away. It's more often that you have to take little steps in a new direction.
Mm, you touched on something that I think is really important. Just this idea of wisdom, and it's not necessarily this or that and this and that, but having the wisdom to know the difference. How does one cultivate that wisdom and grow into it?
I have a good friend who's in his 80s, and I'll probably butcher the quote, but he has it on his wall, and he says, wisdom comes in essence. I'll boil it down because I will mess it up. He says, wisdom comes from being able to make bad decisions and learn from them and know not to make them again. So we can either make those bad decisions ourselves, which is painful and happens to us, and we call it the school of hard knocks or the life or what have you. But we also have this amazing opportunity where other people have taken their knowledge. Here, I'll show you. Look at this. Here is a small stack of books. This is other people's wisdom. And I can take any of that wisdom and assimilate it without having to go through all the pain they did. So if you're not a student of study, I'd say if you want to gain wisdom, become a student of study and figure out the principles that are contained in those books, in those courses, in those videos. Extract that and then ask yourself, how do I apply that in my life? And then listen for the answer to come.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's so funny. In the same way, I have like a stack of books just inside. I love to read, and I love to incorporate these different teachings, just into my life. But when you have someone that's growing and just going through everything, how do you help somebody who, I'm gonna speak to a very specific audience here. Like, how do you help someone who is that multimillionaire? I've met people whom they have these wonderful, wonderful businesses outside looking in, and they essentially have it all. The only thing it seems that they lack is peace. How do you help someone cultivate that peace who otherwise has everything else?
You know, there's a number of different directions that could go, and that's a very personalized situation. But like if someone is seeking peace, the first thing they have to do is take some time to identify what is it that is bringing peace in my life, and what is it that's pulling peace away from my life? And I can't speak to any one individual, but I can say that having a successful business doesn't mean jack squat. But work was made for humans. Who was it I don't remember who said that. It's an amazing concept. We are happiest when we're doing and we're acting and we're creating. And we're also even happier, I believe, when we're lifting other people. It doesn't matter where you look. Every major religion teaches that we should be out helping others. There's a reason for that. That is one of those essential core truths that it doesn't matter which way you believe, atheist on to any religion. We as humans are happiest when we're lifting and helping in some way. We bring ourselves far more satisfaction, and we recognize that we're living a life well fulfilled. So I would guess if somebody is successful on paper and they have that list of all the things they've done, but they're not feeling that peace and that satisfaction, probably inside they know they're supposed to be doing something else, but they don't know what that is, or they're too scared to take action and do it.
You know, we talk a lot about holistic health. What role does this positive energy exchange play in the holistic health of the overall well-being of a person?
Well, I would say the number one thing that I've heard that brings good health is gratitude. It's not taking your vitamins. It's not exercise. It's not making sure you eat the right thing. Gratitude. Now, how is it that this thing that's stuck, like it's just between my ears, right? Maybe I feel it, maybe I think it, maybe I speak it. How is it that is so powerful that they have studies? The people who live the longest are grateful and they're happy. Dick Van Dyke just turned 100. The guy says, I attribute my good life to the fact that I look for the good. And he's always been that positive person. So there's this whole mindset thing that we can't escape it. And there's been studies that validate this. And then there's been anecdotal stories of people who have literally healed themselves through changing their mindset and beliefs. I'll tell you the one that shocks me the most is I've heard, read, studied. There's evidence that people who get an organ transplant sometimes get some memories from the person that donated the organ. There was one I heard of where they got an organ transplant and started craving French fries. And they never liked French fries before. The person that died, that they got their organ from, was driving to go buy French fries. Now, if there's that strong of a connection between the body, the mind, and our emotions, that you can literally receive emotions and characteristics from someone else's organ, and there's evidence for that, I'm not making this up. How? And yet all we treat ourselves with is some pills and exercise. We're missing 90% of the boat here, folks. There's so much more we can't even comprehend. We're literally just at the very first baby steps of discovering how the human body works. But if we look back through history, there's a lot of clues that have been left by humans in the past, and we're going to keep discovering, oh, wait, yeah, gratitude does matter. Oh, wait, mindfulness does matter. Oh, wow, they really didn't know what they were talking about a few thousand years ago. And we're starting to rediscover that. But it's interesting, our medical system as it is today was built around this idea that we are just a machine, and if a part wears out, you replace it with a different part. And there's far much more to our human bodies than that.
Yeah, the body is so interesting. I just love reading about one of my degrees in biochem, so it's hilarious for me. You know, when we're talking about the stories of people getting these organ transplants, my favorite one, by the way, is this young lady had a heart transplant and started having dreams of the person or dreams that she couldn't explain. Kind of find out it was experiences from the previous person whose heart it was. And there are countless stories like that, as you said. When we're talking about Western medicine and the different medicines around the world, Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine, what role, if any, does Western medicine play kind of in intermingling all of these different health perspectives?
Oh man, yeah. So if I'm up skiing and I break my leg, I'm not going to meditate my leg better. I'm going to have some doctor poke the bones back where they go, line them back up, and put me in a cast. Because when things are really broke, there's a really good place to go in and fix that. But oftentimes, if that person had a heart transplant and experience those emotions, it might be that the emotions we're feeling. Have you ever heard someone, this will probably tell you better. Have you ever heard someone who says, "Oh, I just carry all my stress in my neck"? Wait a second. You're going to go in and take a pain pill because you're carrying stress in your neck. What if we asked ourselves, what's the stress that I'm carrying in my neck? And we remove that stress. Well, now I just removed the need for that pain pill. So is there a time and a place for Western medicine? 100%. I literally was in a position a couple of years ago where my back went bad, and I went from walking on Monday, dragging my left leg on Tuesday, to not being able to walk on Wednesday. I lost the ability to lift my foot up, and they had to do an emergency surgery to put me back together. I think that's amazing. I'm so grateful that there was a surgeon that could do that, but I'm not going to go in because I'm carrying stress in my neck and take a pill to try and mask it. I'm going to go in and say, what am I causing myself that makes me feel the stress in my neck?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's a very important distinction to make because a lot of times people, especially when we talk about these things on the show, people think that we're telling them to go meditate away very serious diseases or illnesses or acute pains, where that's not what this is for. Holistic medicine, a lot of it, not all of it, a lot of it is for maintenance and it's for preventive medicine and things that you accumulate over time. And in the Western world, we call that chronic pain. And the chronic pain, to tie everything back together, oftentimes come from stored trauma, stored energy, the things that we picked up that we've been programmed with throughout our lives. So we mitigate that. It's only when we get older that it starts to show up physically. And we might start needing a little bit more external help to get through and to push past things. One thing I really want to talk about with leading into the difference between acute pain and chronic pain and Western medicine and traditional Chinese and holistics, this idea of slowing down, as we talked about earlier, and tying that back into the wisdom of understanding the difference. How do you slow down to say that, hey, maybe I need to go talk to a doctor or maybe I need to go talk to a holistic therapist? What point do you rely on your own wisdom, your own knowledge, or do you go talk to the doctor and have them point you to the holistic therapist and vice versa?
So I think that depends on the specific situation. Oftentimes, the best thing we can do is first find out what our options are. Now, a lot of people have been programmed, and I can use that school example of, oh, I'm supposed to turn to that expert, and we've been programmed to think that the doctor is that one expert that's going to know everything, and that's great for certain situations. But the doctor literally, if you're driving down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, they see you, it's like taking a picture and looking at that picture and being able to assess where you've been and where you're supposed to be going. They just get this teeny snapshot of you. So for each one of us, it's important that we are aware and have awareness. Where have I been? What could be causing this? Why am I on this trajectory I'm even on? Because if you go to the doctor and hand him this picture and say, oh man, I constantly have headaches, well, he doesn't know any of the backstory. And so if you're not aware what could have caused all those headaches, maybe you were kicked in the head by a horse and that's what's causing it. I had a friend who got kicked by a horse a couple of years ago and it took a long time to recover. If they'd gone in and been like, oh man, I feel all this pain, but never told him I was kicked by the horse, the doctor would have a hard time understanding what's going on. But at the same time, they do a great job, but we need to be the ones who own our own health. We can't abdicate that to someone else who only gets snapshot views when we have all the data that we're processing. So if we take that time to analyze and say, what are all the symptoms? What could be contributing to that? Why should I go to a traditional doctor and map some of that out? Or why should I go to a holistic doctor? And maybe I should go to both and take them all the information I have and share with both of them. Now you're going to get yourself educated and you can say, well, here's the traditional medical plan. Here's the holistic medical plan. Which one's a better fit for where I'm at right now in my life and the needs I have right now?
Oh, I love that. Just utilizing the brain dump again in order to map out our reality to achieve the type of healing and success that we're looking for. That's just so beautiful. But hey, Jason, we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to leave with the audience before we go?
You know, I am so grateful that you had me on to be able to share all of this with you. If you are a small business owner, that's what I do all day is help small business owners. Love to help you. Reach out. Love for you to connect. But the one tip I'd want to share with people before we go is that if there's incongruencies, if there's negativity, if there's those kinds of problems, oftentimes it's our body trying to say, hey, there's a problem. Will you pay attention to it? And it's not that we should necessarily mask those things. It's that we should take the time to dive in and figure them out. And that's true in all areas of our life, with our relationships, with our business. We have this amazing sense inside of us that can detect a problem, and it's trying to alert us to them. So if we take the time to listen, we can live so much better life.
Wow, that's beautiful. And where can people find you?
Grazora.com, Grazora.com, or smallbusinessbigvisibilitypodcast.com. We're also on YouTube, Facebook, on all the socials, all the podcast platforms. You can find us there. Or you can look me up, Jason McKenzie. Hard to miss. I'm the guy with the red beard.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, for coming on. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of Aim Soup. We will have all of those links and connections in the description below. Please check out his website. Like I said, those resources that I stated earlier are on there. I will be printing them out myself. And until next time, bye. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.